My name's Chris McGowan. I'm the CEO of Thunder Labs, and you're listening to the Thundercast. Is that how you wanted it?
That is perfect. That's exactly what I was after. I wanted that feeling.
We are here to talk about The Conquest of Foy, which is a book that you wrote. Congratulations on writing a book.
Thank you very much.
How was that experience?
I wouldn't recommend it.
Why ever not?
Because
That's kind of the opposite of what I was thinking you were going to say.
I wouldn't recommend it. It's not ideal. Think about it. Think about how many hours. It took me 12 years. So think about how many hours I needed to sit in a dark-ish place, literally and mentally, and spit out 90,000 words. It's not an ideal thing for your mental health. It's not what your therapist would recommend.
Isn't it the same as journaling?
No. Because you're writing something that's not you. But yeah, I don't know. I would say it's different to journaling.
I suppose journaling's reflecting on your day that's just gone by.
Exactly.
You were
Yes,
neither a saint or Harold Godwinson or William the Conqueror. So it's not really. It's not a biography. It's not a biography, is it?
No.
Let's come back onto those themes about that, and
Happy to talk about that.
yeah, we'll come to it. The most important question that I've asked you. This is the second time I've asked you because our first recording didn't work. Harold.
Here we go again. Yeah, it's good though. I appreciate doing it a second time.
Okay. Just for anyone listening to this, we recorded in a whole hour, but for some idiot, me, didn't press record properly, so we're going again.
But it was a good rehearsal. I enjoyed it though.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was great as well. I'm going to ask you about Harold. Let's talk about him and some of the things that I've learned. Harold Godwinson was the English king. 1066, Battle of Hastings. Mm-hmm. Did he die by getting shot in the eye?
That's what most scholars would believe, and would put forward in their papers, and the endless amount of papers that I've read. Although I did come across the odd alternative ending. Mm-hmm. What was the word you brought up?
Postulate.
They postulated different endings, and those are the things that got me very interested in. Even the idea of writing it took me a while to warm up to. But yeah, I was digging around because I watched it all started in 2000 when I watched a documentary by the amazing Simon Sharma, who was a British historian, and he did a BBC series called A History of Britain, and he literally started from almost prehistoric kind of ages, and then took you through a journey of the British Isles up until the current day. And he did an episode on 1066, and it just captured my imagination because as an Aussie school kid, we didn't get what you got. We didn't get the 1066 history classes. We got very different history, so it did get me very excited. So I was digging around for years after it, and around 2007 I got started because I wanted to dig into it. But going back to your question, I moved away. Going back to your question, I like the idea. I'm not sure if it happened, but I like the idea that it wasn't Harold that was struck in the eye with an arrow and died. I like the idea that he was whisked away and lived out his days in a monastery.
There's something, there's something deeply appealing about that he would have been preserved and have gone to live in a monastery or something else. And again, he wouldn't be the first British monarch that had been hidden away or whisked away, or
Oh, there's plenty. Yeah,
there's some plenty. Yeah, there really is. It's fascinating of all the history prehistoric through to modern times. That was the one that got you, because if I was to say to a random name a monarch of Britain, let's say, I wonder how many would talk about the Battle of Hastings in 1066.
Not many. Most of them would go to King Henry VIII.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty seminal, right? The 1066 time with the Normans, and we've been thinking about. I know we talked about it earlier on, so we have to review
With episode 1.
episode 1 that no one's ever going to hear because it's I didn't record it properly. And one of the things that we talked about is like the sliding door moment and how different Britain may have been if the Normans hadn't made their conquest of England. And we were saying before that it would have happened at some point, right? The French and the English combining
really
populations.
Valid point. Yeah,
they would have done it.
Yeah, well, going back to that point, if Harold had not had a falling out with his brother, if he maintained his relationship with his brother somehow, if he wasn't bribed by other nobles who were members of the Witan, or if he didn't bow to their pressure, I believe that he would have remained king and he would have won the Battle of Hastings. So, and Britain would have been an amazingly different place for the next 200, 300 years. I don't know if it would be much different today. Of course, we'd have a different monarch today, but I don't think it would be much different. You even postulated that there was that we may not have gone through the Reformation. But
true. I suspect we probably wouldn't have.
No, the English Reformation anyway. Yeah, it's possible. But England would have been a completely different place. Because think about it, when the Normans took over, say if you're like a farmer in, I don't know, somewhere in the Midlands, your local noble was all of a sudden a Norman, who was promised that land as part of their prize for going on to the Battle of Hastings with William of Normandy. So apart from that, most English people just got on with their lives, but a lot of things changed significantly around how they managed government. The Doomsday Book, which was 50 years later.
Actually, that is a complete blast from the past. The Doomsday Book was 50 years after the Battle of Hastings. I've not thought about this since I was like 14.
It was called the Doomsday Book because its judgments were as final as the Judgment Day or the Doomsday. So it was like a nickname for it. It wasn't called the Doomsday Book at the time. But yeah, it was William the Conqueror's first go at, I want to completely have a catalogue of everything that's in this land. It's quite significant. No other king did that. It was quite amazing. He's the first database king. It's fascinating. Yeah.
So he documented the assets of the land and created law around it?
Every pig. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just insane how much detail he went to on that document.
So it's my blinking thing again. You think I'd learn from the first one why that's doing that?
Did we get kicked out?
No, not this time. So the Doomsday Book was 50 years after the Battle of Hastings. And was it completed in his lifetime, the Doomsday Book?
Yeah, it was completed in his lifetime.
Oh, okay, so he lived to be quite an old monarch then.
He did, but his kids and his grandkids were just, they tore the nation apart in their battles for power after him.
Who came in after William the Conqueror?
I don't know. My research kind of stopped after the Battle of Hastings, but I think Stephen and the famously bad John were not long after. Yeah.
Is John the one that Robin Hood's about? It is, isn't it? I just love it. It's just so brilliant. Actually, I loop back to something else about, you have to think of the advantages for the French king at the time to have, these powerful Norman warriors be distracted with a kingdom of their own. It seems to me that it would have been in his interest to stop having the friction with the Norman borders there. And, just extrapolating out of that further, if you think about the, Lutheran and Calvinist Reformation, just to your point before about
The English Reformation.
Yeah. Perhaps the Normans would have gone, east rather than north, and, possibly would have suppressed those things, 500 years later.
Yeah, well, they actually did that. They actually did go to Sicily and whatnot. So you're probably not far from the truth there.
But I was just thinking about how. So at school, I did Reformation history. So I was very interested in Renaissance, Reformation. So that's the connection there. And historical fiction is my favourite thing to read. I love it. Although I'm very addicted at the moment to Adrian Tchaikovsky, the British sci-fi writer. If you've never read his stuff, it's wonderful. But I was going to come back onto why we're talking, because we're talking about 1066. I haven't even introduced you yet. I'll get to that at the end. We'll do it later. I'm just fascinated about 1066. I'm fascinated by the Bayeux Tapestry, and I know it's obvious, but we were talking about this earlier on. Now, just talk to me about the Bayeux Tapestry, will you? Just remind me, because I know you've reminded me once, but remind me again.
No, it's okay. So roughly about 20 to 30 years after 1066, Bishop Odo of Bayeux commissioned tapestry workers to work on a 70-metre long illustration of the story of 1066, which even starts with the previous king before Harold, which was Edward the Confessor. It's available to see in Bayeux in France.
Where's Bayeux?
It's on the east coast. West coast. On the west coast, just south of. Actually, I'm not entirely sure where on the coast. We can look that up.
I'll look it up. Yeah.
But anyway, there is a copy of it in Reading.
Is it 70 metres long, the Reading copy?
Yes, it is. It's exactly the same. The only difference is, funny enough, the one in Reading in the UK, because it was done in the 19th century and they were very prim and proper kind of Puritans, all of the little illustrations in the border, a lot of them were naked little boys or naked, they put clothes on them.
Is that right?
Yeah. So if you look at it, you can get you can see differences between the Bayeux tapestry and the Reading tapestry. They put little clothes on the naked people.
So that was done what 1500s? You say 1600s for the Puritans? When was that?
Yeah. So I'm talking about the. It's more of the Church of England kind of. It's not Puritan, because Puritan was 1600s, 1500s, 1600s, and the Puritan influence is there over Elizabeth I. But in the mid 19th century, the Anglican Church or the Church of England had a big influence around, like a moral view of things, and nudity was kind of frowned on in art. So they put little clothes on the boys and the girls. It's funny. Oh, yeah. But that's the only difference. Is apart from that, it's complete, perfect copy, and you can go and see it in Reading. But anyway, the Bayeux tapestry carried out in the late 11th century is the best source we have for the history around 1066. And it's still used, it's still studied today. And around, going back to your original point around, was Harold killed with an arrow through the eye? You could take that any different way, by interpreting what you see on the Bayeux tapestry. So if only it was written down, it would have been a bit more clear, but it's all illustration. There are some words in the Bayeux tapestry, which we'll get to later when we talk about St. Foy's relics.
Yeah, it's fascinating, really, the Bayeux tapestry. It's like a very early propaganda piece, isn't it?
That's exactly what it was. It was them confirming this is what happened, and there's no two ways about it. And I think I can understand why that would be important for them.
Why is that? Like, why?
Because the English propaganda was different. They were preaching even from the pulpits, not just from their own governments. What happened, and some even claiming that William the Conqueror's claim wasn't right, or or something happened that didn't happen. So they wanted to set it in stone for the generations to come, and the tapestry was the best way to do it. Well, it was clearly obvious.
When you say set in stone, you mean set in canvas or set
In material that's falling apart.
Yeah. They maybe should have chosen a better material.
Apparently Hitler tried to steal it as well.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's that popular. Like, it's sought after. Yeah.
I wonder what it would be fascinating to know, like all ancient text, art, whatever, what the real, the real story is, behind it. I mean, there's lots of guesswork around it. Your book centres around Foy,
So there's the Relics of Saint Foy, which exist in a little village, in a valley, in a lovely valley, in rural France called Conques. And Saint Foy is a 4th century martyr, a 12-year-old girl who was killed for her faith, and they kept her relics, and her relics were immensely popular around that time, between the 9th and the 12th century. In France, easily the most popular saints' relics to visit. And people who were travelling to Santiago de Compostela, which is the Camino trail, which is still travelled today by pilgrims, would go through Conques. A lot of them would go through Conques, visit Foy, and venerate Foy, and then continue on to Santiago. There is evidence, clear evidence in the Bayeux Tapestry that Harold Godwinson did swear some sort of oath to William of Normandy and over the bones of a saint. So I took that and I started to investigate what were the key and really powerful saints around that time. Now, it's clear from the Bayeux Tapestry that Harold went home back to England across the Channel a disturbed and kind of battling man. That's what they wanted to portray, that he went home knowing that he would have to betray the oath that he took. Now, why is that? There's a someone who witnesses the oath points to the word sacramentum in the Bayeux Tapestry, and that gives evidence that there was some sort of relic there. So I brought the two stories together, the story of Foy's relics, which was famous for theft. It got stolen 2 or 3 times by other monks.
What's that called again? What's that?
Furtus sacra.
Furtus sacra, which is the theft of holy relics.
Yeah, in Latin. So, and it is an actual practice. So I picked up a couple of scholarly books around Furtus sacra, around how monks would leave their monastery. They'd be sent by an abbot, go to another monastery pretending to be a novice. They would stay there for years and just gain the trust of their abbot. And once they got the access to the desired relic, they would run off with it. And once it was discovered that the relic was stolen, the monastery where it was stolen from, they wouldn't deny that it was stolen, because they didn't. As soon as they said, "Oh, we both have this relic," it would lose its fame. So they couldn't say, "Oh, we still have it." They would actually announce to the populations around them, "It's been stolen and it's gone to this particular monastery. If you want to see this particular relic, you've got to go to this monastery now." And that would maintain the fame of that relic. So they had this higher calling. Yeah, it is fascinating. But they would obviously try and steal it back, or they would appeal to the Pope to get it back. And that happened. And I touch on that in my book.
Do you think the same would happen in Australia if someone stole the big banana from Coffs Harbour?
Yeah, that's a good one. Big banana, surely. I mean, it'd be hard to stuff into your monk's habit.
I think that's a whole different podcast.
I just got a really bad mental image on that.
Yeah. I find this fascinating, this Furtus sacra I'd never heard of before I read your book. I mean, and I think this is interesting, which is why it appealed to me. In reading it, it refreshed my memory on some things that I've not thought about for a long time. but also just the lessons from history about the things that have gone on for the church, and I was reading it. God, that's so obvious. Even now, I say, God, that's so obvious. I don't mean that, but it's so obvious that they would do that. I mean, really, it was a. I don't mean to sound cynical or skeptical, but it was a money-making exercise having
100%,
these
100%.
relics there, right?
If you had the relic, you had the income, because pilgrims would come and they would leave money, and they would leave. So it was all about revenue. I mean, the story in my book is they steal Foy and bring it up from Conques up to Normandy, Falais, which is the name of the town. And it was all because the bishop there, Bishop Odo, who's the guy who commissioned the Bayeux Tapestry I bring you into my
Is
book.
that right? Okay.
So he wanted it in order to bring wealth. So it was all about money. And I definitely bring that to the forefront about how corrupt the church was at times around those kind of things.
So you've got a few characters in there, and just going to replay this. So you got William the Conqueror, who's a Norman noble. And the Normans, I've learned from your book, or actually had reaffirmed from your book, were of Scandinavian descent, a warrior class, if you like, living in France. And then you've got Harold Godwinson, who came to the throne after Edward the Confessor, although he was a troubled human because apparently he'd made some sacramental oath that said he would give the throne to William the Conqueror. And then this thing that comes up in your book, which was new knowledge for me. The other stuff I sort of knew. I didn't know. It had reaffirmed, apart from the sacramental oath, but more about Harold and William. It was Tostig was a new character for me. It had never featured in my knowledge at all of 1066. So talk to me about Tostig, his role, and the importance of that.
Tostig Godwinson was a younger brother. He was one of, there's 4 or 5 Godwinson brothers, Harold being the oldest. Tostig was one of the younger ones, and he was an earl in Mercia and Northumbria. But he was the family hothead. We
all need one.
Yeah. He would fleece abbeys of their money and resources, so he would go into a monastery and basically steal their livestock, their money, their gold, and just run off with it. So the other nobles from the surrounding areas kind of appealed to Harold, and they said, if you don't sort this out, we're not going to support you when you try to become king, and we know that you're going to try and do it. And even Edward the Confessor, the king before him, who was basically a monk leading up to his death because he became a puppet king, even pressed Harold to go and sort it out, clean up the mess. And he did agree to do that. Now, he obviously agreed to do a lot because he basically sold him down the river. Instead of maintaining his loyalty to his brother, or even instead of coming to some sort of bargain where he could keep his brother but hand over his earldom over Northumbria, he completely betrayed him and sold him down that river for the assurance of getting the backing when he would try to become king after Edward the Confessor died, which wasn't long after. So, but Tostig's betrayal turned into Harold's end. Harold may have won the Battle of Hastings if he didn't have that fight with Tostig. Tostig got offended and betrayed, and he fled to Norway, as far as Norway, which is amazing, to build an alliance with the Norwegian king, Harald Hardrada, at the time, and convinced him, I will give you the English throne, right? I will hand it to you, and I will help you invade England. Because I know England, you don't know the land. I know the land and I know the way. So he convinced him, let's invade England via York. The Humber River, you know the Humber River?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they sailed maybe 400 ships, it's been estimated.
That's incredible.
Incredible. So Tostig convinced these Norwegian people to sail to England, sail down the Humber and take over York. Once that happened, Harold had no choice but to put off his standing in Hastings and head north to protect England from his brother up in York. And he clearly and evidently wasted maybe half of his military strength up in York. So Tostig is probably the number one reason why Harold failed in Hastings.
It's unbelievable. You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't.
You know?
It's a magnificent story of betrayal and something that could have been really easily cleaned up by a built relationship or a fixed relationship.
Well, I suppose with the promise of the throne, you know, it's quite particularly at that time. I'm just trying to get my timelines right. So I'm thinking, you know, I'll come back to
Tostig.
Tostig and the Godwinsons and Bernard Cornwall in a second. But it's the emergence of divine right, you know, the God-given right for a king or a queen to rule. And you mentioned something when we did version 1 of this podcast that made me think of it, but I didn't even get to ask about it. And you know, divine right as an expression came after this time, right? I think. Yeah. And it's making me think, like, is this the beginning, the genesis of divine right, where, you know, it's the king and the church is one, but the king. Did that come later?
I think it is one of the starts because around when Harold rose to the throne, a few months before the Battle of Hastings, it was about him being of Saxon blood. It wasn't necessarily about his approval with the Archbishop or the Pope, because the archbishops in England, they were hated by the Pope. So it wasn't really about that God-given right. It was more about the blood ties. When William the Conqueror did win, he did win after getting papal authority to invade. So then that started to enter the language around God-given right to the throne. So I think you might be right that may be one of the reasons. Because he had the papal banner, he had the relics sewn into his armour. Not sure what relics that were in history, but according to my book, it's St. Foy. But so I think that was a big part of it.
Yeah, it has to be. There has to be something in that. I mean, you know, it'd be wonderful to go deep and explore that even more, right? About the beginnings of these things. Maybe we should write a book together on this stuff. Anyway, like an alternate history line. But I'll come back to mental health and book writing, and maybe I don't want to do that because I've got a few things on. This period in history, King Canute, Edward the Confessor, you know, is around the time that, you know, it's about the end of the Last Kingdom series by Bernard Cornwall.
Yep.
And you can see some of those characters, and you see the Godwinsons as shadowy characters in the you know, behind the monarchy. Even then, it must have been a fascinatingly powerful family. I wonder if they're around today still, the Godwinsons.
Wouldn't surprise me. But they were wielding the strings of power around King Canute's time, and definitely Edward the Confessor. Edward the Confessor became a puppet king because of the power of the Godwinsons. And he chose to be like a monk.
We are live on a podcast series. Chris McGowan. Oh, yeah.
Oh, right. I thought you said yes.
I've press record now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Do you think in that time everyone drank mead?
Yeah, there would have been a mead or a type of ale. I called it ale in my book. But that's because we don't really know. But there definitely would have been mead. But I believe there would have been some sort of ale. I don't know if there's evidence to that. I don't think whiskey was invented or stills.
Scottish probably had it.
No, not by 1066. Surely not that far back. There wouldn't have been still technology. I actually don't know. I've got no idea. I've not looked into that.
You know, there's this restaurant on Carrington Street called Vinny de Vinny, and I drank some wine there recently from Georgia, and I'm pretty sure they were saying to me that Georgians may have been the first to have wine or to make wine.
That's a big call.
2000 BC. Everyone do a fact check on that.
Yeah. That's a big call. That is a big call. To actually have wine, grape juice fermented to an alcoholic base.
Yeah. Okay. Philippe or Raf, if you've made it this far into our podcast, please confirm or deny that the Georgians were first 2000 BC.
I'm not going to dispute that at all because I might get beaten up.
My wine expert friends listen to this. They own the restaurant.
Okay, great.
They own the restaurant, Vinny de Vinny. I recommend it. They're not only wine connoisseurs, but history adventurers. They've travelled all around these places. It's beautiful. It's your kind of jam, actually, you know.
That is my jam.
Yeah, they go to places, try the wine, and then believe in the history of, you know, whatever. And I was even talking about them. I always say this wrong. Compasta de Santiago. Compasta Santiago. Don't laugh at me. I can see.
No. What are you trying to say?
The place of Santiago. You know.
So Santiago de Compostela.
That's what I said.
Oh, you said pasta. I was talking about food.
No, that's the Italian guy, not the Spanish one.
That's great. Santiago de Compostela is a pilgrimage site in the far northwest coast of Spain, where pilgrims go and they go through the village of Conch, where Foy is.
Yeah.
A lot of them do go, not all of them, because there's multiple different routes that you can do to get to Santiago.
I mean, I wish I had some deep academic reason for asking you if they were drinking mead in 1066, but it was more just because I just poured myself a beer.
That's right.
Because I was thinking, I wonder what they drank back then. They're probably drinking out of goat's horns. That's what I'm imagining.
Short of some sort of, I don't know, beer chugging thing. I don't know. I'm thinking of like something out of Oktoberfest.
Yeah, it wasn't Riedel glasses, that's for sure.
No, that's right.
Okay, so back to the topic at hand. Writing books. When we did our first version, I'm just going to repeat some of these themes because, you know...
I vaguely remember saying I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the first podcast and then that we didn't record because I forgot to press record, and then I'll come back to these themes.
Go.
Okay. You said seek out mentorship and leadership. You said feel it because if there's no tears in the writer, there's no tears on the page. I love that, by the way. You said remove distractions, forced focus, and something about it being an escape. And there was a whole load of other stuff we talked around business for that.
Let's start with the first point.
That's not my question.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. We'll come back to those in the first point. My question is, like, how hard is it to write a book? You know, you've said that it's not good for mental health, and it's on your OK Day today, by the way, in case anyone ever listens to this. It's very timely.
Are you?
Yeah, mostly I am.
Okay.
But also authentically, you know, I struggle with stuff. I'm a
Same.
creative, troubled person, just like the next human.
I don't think you can be a creative person without some sort of occasional struggle. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. Anyway, back to you.
I just wonder if you know the outlet is the necessary form of expression. You know, like so, the book. I know I jokingly said everyone has a book in them, and I think I even misquoted you saying you said that, but you didn't say that. How hard is it? Like, and do you have to get it done? If you're of that mindset, do you have to get it done?
Yeah. Well, as an author is just someone who struggles with writing and just managed to finish. So, like, I'm no perfect writer. Do you know what I mean? So, but I just wanted to have this done. But I wanted to have it done authentically. You know, so I wanted to do it properly. So I got some help I got some people around me who told me when it was crap and who guided me to be in a particular state when I write in order for the writing to be of some use. And also the golden rule of writing is just write, just get it on the paper and edit it later. So yeah, no, it took me 12 years to write and 2 years to edit and another year to pitch. So it did take a lot out of me, and it does take a lot out of people, I can understand. And a lot of people who write, most people I've met who write did struggle with mental health challenges in their time of writing. So it is a difficult, but I do believe that you've got to have some sort of outlet, and that is something that I definitely have as an outlet.
I think the thing that connects, I'm not trying to draw too long a bow as we're talking about Harold and the arrow and the eye, but it seems like an appropriate expression.
Bows.
It's good expression.
Yeah, it is. Lots of bows.
I think creating a business is an exercise in creativity, but it's also an exercise in fortitude and delayed gratification. And there's some of the podcasts on this that I've done with Gus Janssen, who's a psychologist friend of mine. And delayed gratification, in your case, after writing a book for 12 years, 2 years of edit, 1 year of pitching. I tell you, that's delayed gratification. So that's on my mind. We'll come to that. But also, those things that you said about those 5 things there, seek out mentorship, really feel it, which makes it a passion, removing distractions and almost being forced into getting this done. They also feels like lessons for business for me. They really do. They really, there's something visceral about those things for me. And what you're making me think, it's an accident that I invited you here. I just met you and I was reading those books, the 22 books that I read in 3 months because I was addicted to historical fiction. And then you said, I've got a book. And I said, I'll read your book.
That's right. That was about a year ago or 2 years ago, wasn't it?
No, it was not. I don't know how long ago.
Anyway.
But the accident is that these themes that you're talking about are visceral for me, and they're things I have to remind myself of. And there's some stuff, to be honest, that I'm not doing that well. Like, I don't seek mentorship or leadership. I find it really hard to find people that I can get genuine advice from. I really struggle with it, and not because I haven't got good people around me, but it's really difficult to, what they say, opinions like arseholes, everyone's got one.
That's fantastic.
I just want people to be, and I've said this before, I don't want them to be, it's some thinking that I have around advisors and advice and mentors,
But you mentioned in your last episode that advice costs most of the time.
Yeah, advice costs. Yeah.
Good advice costs.
Did you say that because you think that we should pay for good advice?
Yeah, well, going back to your point, and I mean, you mentioned it yourself in your last episode, and I definitely felt that I wasn't cutting it in my writing earlier on. So I did reach out to a writing association and paid for mentorship, and it was a really good investment. And it's something that will definitely still help me today. And it needed to be someone that I didn't know. Because a lot of the times if you seek advice from people that you do know, it's going to cut them or cut you. It's not always going to work. That's my experience. So having someone that I didn't know, I trusted them to be honest with me and not need to keep my friendship. And this particular lady was fantastic. She tore my writing apart, which I'm grateful for. She really did. She tore it apart.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, it was really good. And I think we need that. Like I am still consider myself an amateur around writing. So yeah.
What are you going to write next?
Definitely something, but I'm going to take my time. I still have
another 13 years.
No, it's not going to be 13 years because my kids are older now. My kids are teenagers. I started when my firstborn was born, so Not the best time to have young kids and trying to write a book. But yeah, I'd like to keep to that medieval kind of feel. I'm drawn to it. I'm drawn to the Middle Ages. I'm drawn to the superstition. People really, their imagination, their minds, their devotion was so caught up by some weird stuff, stuff that we wouldn't buy today, or most people wouldn't. So I'm fascinated by devotion that's just blind. So I want to write about that.
Actually, I think that you're onto something there. I mean, go medieval. Is that a line from Pulp Fiction? Yeah, it is. You say that people wouldn't buy that, but they're buying different stuff today.
So true.
It's the human condition to believe or need to believe in something bigger than ourselves. Even me. I mean, I'm spiritual but not religious. SMBR, SBNR.
I like that.
It's a real category, you know. I mean, I'm of faith, but I'm skeptical and cynical of institution. Just because, I mean, it's not just religious institutions; it could be any institution. Just because I think they're corrupt, doesn't mean though that they're not right. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't exist and stand for something. I don't believe in tearing down all that we have. I mean, what would you replace it with anyway? So you know, It's interesting that you point back to a period 1,000 years ago as a place of reference, but things haven't changed that much. It's still so important for us.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I mean, people are spending like 8 hours a day on their phones. So, and back then people were spending 8 hours a day praying at shrines, at bones. So,
At least they rhyme, bones and phones. Maybe that's the thing.
That's a good point. But yeah, when you think about it, we basically do worship technology and our phones and information.
False idols.
Yeah. No. It's not much different to the Middle Ages. You're absolutely right there. I guess I'm just fascinated by it because it's so far from me in time and also across the other side of the world. So I want to write about it.
Did you travel to Normandy? Did you manage to get there?
So I travelled all of the key sites of 1066 in England. I didn't make it to Normandy. I was in Paris, and my wife and I visited Hastings, and I dragged her around to a few of the other key points in England. So, but yeah, that's what got me started. That was in 2006, and I started writing in 2007. So, yeah.
It's. I was reading the Bernard Cornwell series on Sharp, which I loved. That's the book. That's the 22 books I mentioned.
Wow.
And his. I'm really inspired to do something like that because he the first half of them are set in India, and he travelled around those sites. For people don't know about that. It's about I didn't know about it until I read it, by the way. So I didn't know anything until a few months ago.
Wealthy writers, they get to travel before they write.
Well, he didn't start that way, did he?
No.
He started in, you talk about a 12-year experience for you. He started in 1979, and he's still going, and that came in 1980.
He's fascinating.
Yeah, you're talking 40, 50 years of writing, and the Sharp series was still going after 32 years. So,
wow.
You've still got another 20 years to go.
It's good to know. Good to know.
But so it's more that he was a destitute writer and moved to the US and started writing there. And they aren't sequential in the order he wrote them. But his desire to go to places and study the place and the geography of the region and the buildings, which I find that fascinating. And I think this is something, and I can't remember if we covered in this podcast or the first one I failed to record, but I just feel that a historical fiction book is not the type of book that I could write. I mean, I'm read enough, but I feel like I'd be much better at making something up, like a fantasy book or a science fiction book. Actually, even science fiction these days, when I think about it, I mean, maybe I could do space wizards or fantasy, but I
like that.
I couldn't do sci-fi or historical fiction, but they're the ones that I'm drawn to. I'm drawn to the the past and the replay of that. And I'm drawn to a possibility of the future more than anything else. Like I can't read Lord of the Rings, for example. I like the movies, but can't read the books.
Is that because you do want something something that ties you to reality?
That's a good question.
Because that's what it does for me. No, it does for me because like you, I devour historical fiction. I probably devour more history, non-fiction, because I want something that's real. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, I love Lord of the Rings and a lot of the fantasy stuff. But I do want something that's real, like the Dan Brown stuff we talked about in our first attempt. Dan Brown, it's real stuff. You can go and visit this stuff, like it's real. The stuff in Angels and Demons and the Da Vinci Code and stuff. It's amazing that you can actually jump on a plane, see all of this stuff. And that's what I wanted to do with The Conquest of Foyers. I wanted to have something that's really you can go and visit. So the whole method of furta sacra or stealing sacraments is real. St. Foy's relics are really there in Conques in France. Battle of Hastings really happened. Everything is there. It's just a few things that I changed. Just, it's creative license.
It's fascinating. I don't know if anyone listening to this reads historical fiction, but it's a fascinating genre to read, and I hope you arrive at something interesting next for you, but without prostituting your health, mental health, to actually get there. And again, it's an area that I would love to do, but I just don't know I've got it in me to write a book on it. You said to me earlier on, no tears in the writer, no tears on the page. I love that expression. Is that your expression?
No, it's not. And it's no tears in the reader.
Oh, crap.
It's close. No, it's not mine. I can't quote it right now. But I'm sure you could Google it and find it.
No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. Is that right? It's a really beautiful thing.
Well, it's true. I needed to go to different mental places. Like it's like the key method for a writer is to go there mentally, to taste, to feel, to smell, to see every little thing that's an insignificant thing that's happening in a scene before you talk about the particulars. The snow, the wind, the smell of sewerage, all those kind of things. You need to go there, but more than that, you need to experience what they're experiencing mentally. Now, there were times where I would, because I often wrote in aeroplanes, I would come off an aeroplane and I'd be sweating because I experienced what I was writing. I was feeling it. And that may sound mystical, and that's okay. But it's just me mentally turning up to a place as though I'm watching it in a film. Most of my book is written as though I was watching it in a film. And you experience it. Like we all go to movies and we come away like we've been there. It's no different when you're writing. You need to go there in that place in your head.
I think it's actually, you say it's mystical. It's actually deeply compelling to think about it that way. I think that, having read a series of books, then meeting you, and then reading the book actually increased my enjoyment of the book.
Wow.
Without knowing you that deeply before, before committing to it. I mean, when I make a commitment, I'm in. Right, it's done. Even if it takes me time to get to it, I'm in. And it made me enjoy it more. But it's also made me think about what you're saying about this mystical thing of taking your place to a position of experiencing the things that you want to write about. And that's actually quite a powerful thought. It's very powerful, actually. And I'm thinking about the work that that we do around, not about work, because it's not really about work. Obviously, this podcast has nothing to do with what I do for work. But the message I'm trying to convey, the convictions I have in business and relationships and what's important to me, like it's important to me, and I want it to appear in my work. And I do a lot of visual content, as you've probably seen. And I write things very imperfectly very often, actually. I publish stuff with spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes, and people see, but I still do it. It's probably a real version of me. And it's really, I want people to embrace that and understand it. And, give credit where credit's due, which is what I thought about your book. Like it's a real work of conviction to, and I know I said this before, but delay gratification. Do it when you don't feel like it. Burn pages when you don't like them. It's something gargantuan. What's the, and I feel like maybe I'm closing out some thoughts here, but what's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself having written, did you say 60,000 words?
90.
90 words. It seems bigger than 90 words.
90,000.
Oh, sorry.
90,000 that I reduced to 81, I think.
Okay, 81,000. What was the biggest thing you learned about yourself in writing 81,000 words?
Well, people keep telling me, wow, you've done it. You've proved to yourself that you've done it. And I don't really see it that way. It's a really tough question to answer. What have I learned about myself? I've learned that I can really hurt myself by... No, but we talk about mental health and today being Are You OK Day. As I mentioned in version 1, it did impact my mental health at the time. And so there's a natural reluctance for me to dive into the next piece of work because it wasn't always healthy. Sitting in a room and typing away at a keyboard for hours and hours on end, trying to spit out 800 words a day, is not what your therapist is going to recommend to help your mental health. It's not. And often you would forego the necessary exercise and diet and stuff like that in order for you to punch out some decent material. So that's what I meant by saying when I said at the beginning I wouldn't recommend it. It's just you've just got to be really careful around how you manage your mental stability and your health, your mental health. I don't mean mental stability, I mean mental strength and resilience while you're doing something that is mentally tiring. It's so you and I work in similar areas, in our day jobs and in our work, and sometimes it can cost that similar kind of cost. But writing something that you feel passionate about personally and you don't give a stuff about what other people think about it. In other words, it really is a personal project. It can really tear you apart internally. But it can also spit out an amazing piece of work, something that you're really proud of. And that can be anything. That can be gardening, that can be sculpture, that could be art. For every person, it's different. Where they feel they bleed into it.
I wonder if, I really acknowledge that what is it? There's an expression. To create anything of meaning, takes pain. There's something. There's an expression there that I can't quite get right, but I know that it doesn't. It doesn't just appear. No. You can't just magic something. And aside from the things you mentioned before, mentorship and etc. That list, I won't go over that again. I feel a bit about the same about what I'm doing now. It really matters to me, and I think again, as I've said, it's a creative endeavor, and almost I still take care of my kids and my partner. I hope, but I'm sacrificing almost everything else that's periphery to the pursuit of this, and I don't mean like in a martyr-like way. Ironically, your book's about a martyr or a saint.
Yes.
But I think the pursuit of something, even if no one ever sees it, pursuit of something that's a passion, is still comes at a cost of other things.
Yeah,
because anybody can just cruise and do nothing. But not just anybody can create something, and I think that's that delayed gratification, which is again all the way back to why I wanted to do this, because I really recognise the effort that goes into something. Like I see that because I'm in it. Please, if I can prey on Foy's bones right now, don't let it take me 12 years. Is that how it works?
What?
Can I prey on Foy's bones from here?
I don't know. I don't know. But everything you just said is totally true. Even my wife would attest to the fact that it cost her time. It cost her effort, even though she wasn't involved. So, yeah.
Well, she was involved. She's part of that support network, right? You know.
Yeah, she's my number one cheerleader. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, she's got any spare time. She can be a cheerleader for Thunder Labs as well.
That's right. She's busy. You can't afford her.
She's getting ready for you to write your next book. Okay. I feel like we've covered a lot. We didn't actually go into 1066 as much as I imagined, but I feel like I've learned a lot. I feel like I've learned, the parallels between creativity and book writing and business, and faith. I feel like there's so many themes that we're just scratching the surface of, and the importance in the human condition to believe in something more and bigger. And I think that on that note, I might just make this recommendation to people listening. You should go and buy The Conquest of Foy by Mark McPherson. I think there's one signed copy left in Dimmicks.
There's only a few. Not every Dimmicks is.
Which Dimmicks?
Holds it. There's only a few, but I think the best place to get it from is from Amazon or Waterstones in the UK and Barnes & Noble in the US.
And it's on Kindle Unlimited at the moment, isn't it?
It is, certainly, and it'll stay there.
Yeah, because I've got the hard copy. I've got the paperback, and I've also got the Kindle Unlimited version. And depending on where I was, as you saw, I was trying to put myself... It's interesting, before I let everyone go, I was reading it when I was in the mountains by myself around a fire, and that did something to bring out some of the, the evocative feeling of wilderness. I mean, I was on my own, and I was drinking mead from a goat's horn.
I bet you were. It is definitely a mystical kind of journey, so you're in the right place.
All right. I'm going to press end on our recording, but Mark, thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure, thank you.
Yeah, enjoyed it too.